So the Bible doesn't talk about Thessalonians, it doesn't talk about Ecclesiastics, it doesn't talk about Malachi, but it does talk about the gospel. So when people preach the Bible, they should preach it from the context of the map of the Bible, just like the Bible is a guide to heaven, but the testaments of the Bible are like history books that are only used at times of Bible study and teaching, that doesn't allow people who's not part of a church to get part of that teaching, because the Bible reading does relate to any type of dust, any type of Indian witchcraft, any type of voodoo, any type of American Palestinian that is not related to the gospel of the church. Of how certain churches were asked, why does the Bible preach the end times without Thessalonians? Why does it preach the end times without the Ecclesiastics? Because you would have to be, in order to be an end times pastor, you would have to be able to understand the Thessalonians, of how the nature of the different apostles would counsel about things about men, and why people would not believe the gospel if they were offensive to the further gospels that came before Revelation. Jude, just like Malachi, it wasn't always preached from the end, before the angels, before Moses in the Old Testament, and the Indians in the New Testament are not always in the same box as the gospel that says he comes to be a friend to the friendless and bring rest to the hopeful. Because God, that's the type of things that God says, thinks of things that are good and lovely. But if I read my Bible, how could I not be part of a church if I don't believe in the end times? But I do believe in God. But when the gospel was preached to me, then I believe in the end times, because I asked God, what does he feel about women and people's body type? If the police are going to arrest me for being light-skinned, how is that going to relate to not being able to be part of a gospel that relates to Martin Luther King and Whitney Houston and real-life human beings who come from slavery in America, from times before the Barack Obama presidency, that never was a white presidency outside of Africa, before 1700s before America, 1700 before Europe, in Bible times before Indian times, in Revelation time before New America time, that people wouldn't know. How would someone be in one frame, in one box, in one recording, that's not related to an attack in secret, saying that someone is mentally ill because they say the gospel is preached a certain way, that someone might misunderstand the gospel if it wasn't a whole piece of someone who says that someone would have to follow the rules and law that's not associated with the complete Bible word, of having a place to stay, wondering where someone's going to go, and the revelation of the crown of the gospel that doesn't allow someone to read that Bible in a time that they would be afraid that they can't get married because there was no resources. They couldn't have a wife because the powers around might be someone with a big attitude, might be someone with a twisted word, who says that they want to put a gospel around people because it's not for the individuality of the Christian spirit. What if one person had an abortion, one person was big, or one person was too tall, but they all wanted to read the same gospel because they claimed that God couldn't have an opinion on the end times of something that someone says, that a pastor couldn't represent a church because he says that someone will run their mouth and be illegitimate for the race of the character associated with persecution.